best ball. Somehow I forgot to add myself to the screen, but hopefully you all heard me all right and we are up and running. Tonight we are drafting in the $20 drafters best ball main event. I'm jumping in because these have been filling a little bit slowly. So if you want to draft along, we've got 4 more spots in this one. This one is the main contest over here on drafters. We know that the $2 is going to fill quite quickly. That one is a much smaller contest. This one with 140,000 spaces in it completely. Over the last few years, there's been plenty of occasions where drafters has been right with overlay, which in this contest in particular just means you're competing with less people. I'm guessing plenty of you sickos are drafting with us tonight, as that one filled quite nice and fast. Some familiar names in here. Trying some different things out with the screen, so let me know how this one is for you guys, if you can see everything okay. Looks like we've just about got everything on there. But yes, so this contest, $500,000 up top, second place 200,000, third place 100,000. By the time you get down to 10th place, you're down to 25,000. So it really is about finishing with that kind of dream team that just ticks all the boxes. Shout out Adam. Adam, definitely somebody who's drafted in a lot of our streams over the years. Very smart guy. Great to see him. GM, appreciate you, Hartman, Omega, Michael. Michael, did you get in? I don't see you. And we've got, yes, Michael's in, picking next to me. And then we've got Stephen, Flavorize This at the 9th spot, and Anthony at the 11th spot. So good looking draft. Plenty of smart people in here. This should be a very fun one. Gonna try and mix in these Sunday sessions every now and again. My day job likes to throw little bits of lates at me every now and again. So this week I won't be around on Wednesday or Thursday to stream, but on weeks like that, I'll try and throw in a Sunday session. I was considering going over to FFPC in a couple of weeks' time, doing one of their $35 Superflex drafts. If you haven't checked out FFPC before, link down below in the description gives you $25 off your first $35 or more contest. And it is a really fun contest, that one. But tonight, it's all about the 20 rounds of drafters that we've got going. Yes, Kiki, did you get in? Yes, I see you there, picking up the 7th spot. So proper friends and family. Doing another after. I don't think I can do another after tonight. I'm currently in the midst of writing hell. I've got something like 25 articles I'm writing for Fantasy Pros about best ball this month, and I've still got about 14 to go, and we've got what? Less than a week left. So far today, I've written 3 articles, and I've got another 2 that I'm trying to finish before I call it a night tonight. But definitely will be jumping in more of these. This is my first draft in the $20 contest. As you can see from the top, I am deep in the thick of the $2. I think I'm hit about 60 of them now. So starting to feel like I've got a good flow with them and this site as we get deeper and deeper into it. Let me just check in terms of my rankings. I'll just make sure that I've got mine loaded in. So you see Bijan Robinson's my top RB. I talked about this last week, but I just slightly prefer him to Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley had 435 touches last year, just rushing attempts, not even counting his receiving work. And the history of running backs to have had that many touches, just it doesn't tend to work out very well. Bijan, I'm just ready to go with that. Yeah, for drafters, I've had no problems whatsoever with the notifications pulling through to the app. I've had, if anything, too many notifications because how many drafts I'm in. But on drafters, you get the notification when you're on the clock, and then you get a 15-minute warning, and it's been perfect. Death Angel just missed it again. Honestly, like these drafts on drafters for the $20 contest haven't been filling that fast. I've tried to do a few drafts already, and that's part of why I expected to talk for a little bit before we got into them tonight, but only 9,500 entrants so far out of a possible 140,000. But yeah, that's only for mine. If you get, it'd be interesting to know how you're setting up your draft hacker given week 17 less important. Yeah, so I am using the Spike Week Draft Hacker tool. I haven't actually dove too much into it, because obviously you can see here, we've got a whole bunch of numbers and bits which Spike Week give us the potential to work from. You can see exposure, which is set there for the slate, and then exposure within this tournament. Then similar to how I used to have it on DraftKings, these like exposures with your first of that position group, second of that position group, and then down there projected ownership round one. So it's something which I'm probably going to try and get through another 20 or so drafts on the $2 and then start diving into what I feel feels more important here. Over on drafters, I've already kind of talked about how I want not more running back heavy builds, but I don't want to ignore them as late as I would have pushed it on DraftKings at times. Fresno Shake, if you have an iPhone, you should check out the App Store. It is in the App Store and has been there for a few weeks now. I'm not sure about Android. I don't know if anybody on Android can confirm whether it's there for that. And I'll come back to these in a minute. Good evening, Rich. Good evening. Long time no chat. Brock Bowers and then Trey McBride go off right before me, which leaves me four running backs at the top of my queue before getting to my next wide receiver. So I will take Bucky Irving. I like the idea of pairing Bijan Robinson and Bucky Irving together. Rory asking, if you take an early QB, what's the earliest you feel comfortable taking a second QB? So in one of the 5 articles I've been writing today, whilst, being a terrible parent, I was looking at quarterback pairings and trying to decide on a lot of this. And I feel like there's plenty of value late on at the moment when you look at guys like Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford in particular. Like, I feel like those are guys who I'd still be completely comfortable pairing with Lamar, pairing with Josh Allen, pairing with Jalen Hurts. And then it kind of comes just down to the flavor of them. So with guys like Jaden Daniels, are you looking for a safe floor quarterback to pair with him, or are you just looking for somebody else with high upside? With Jalen Hurts, I tend to lean towards finding somebody like Matthew Stafford with that solid floor. Right, so I am going to take my first wide receiver in Mike Evans here. I just feel like if I push this any further, it's going to get pretty scary in this room. So yeah, like guys like Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts is those weeks where Saquon Barkley can be so dominant. I just want somebody who I'm not shooting for upside. Like, whereas with Josh Allen, I'm quite happy pairing him with Justin Fields, because then you can say, okay, well, the weeks where Justin Fields gets in over Josh Allen, we're probably talking about real ceiling outcomes. Whereas with Jalen Hurts, when Jalen Hurts tends to fail, it's because of Saquon Barkley. And there, I'm just looking for, can I get 15 points somewhere? So there's a lot of those kind of little decisions come into it. But generally speaking, if I've taken Josh Allen, Lamar, Jaden Daniels, one of those top 3 quarterbacks, unless somebody falls massively past ADP, it's probably about that round 9, round 10 range before I'm going to start looking at another quarterback. Yes, that was recent addition. It was a few weeks ago. I was chatting with them and I asked if they could put it in the App Store, and they said they weren't sure they'd be able to. Lo and behold, next day it's in the App Store. So it is good times indeed. Plenty of reason to jump into as many drafts as possible over here on Drafters. Starting to line up guests, you should see less of myself and Tyler over the next few weeks and more of the people you love over here. And if there's particular people that you've enjoyed on our streams in the past, do let me know, because I'd like to make sure we bring back as many people as possible who you guys are enjoying. One of the articles I was writing today, looking at the best ball running backs in the dead zone, and this, like, currently there's 15 running backs in the dead zone. I know last year people spent ages talking about, oh, is the dead zone dead? But so much of that was because of how high we were pushing all the wide receivers. And I'm definitely guilty as anyone with that. But like, in hindsight, the wide receivers got pushed too far up the board, didn't they? You look back and there were guys who were just massive values across the board within the dead zone. But now that things have kind of evened out a little bit and we're seeing more running backs in the first round than we did last year, we're seeing more running backs across the first 2 rounds than we did then like the first 4 rounds, really. Now, it's kind of got me wondering whether the dead zone is back to being a more traditional dead zone and whether we need to be wary of it again. I'll come back to this in a moment. Happy Sunday to all who don't have work the next day. Very much enjoying this one. So Xavier Worthy was the player I possibly would have taken to try and keep pushing wide receiver up a little bit. In terms of my rankings, you can see James Cook, Marion Hampton, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard. It's this glut of running backs. I don't really want to take another running back, so I am going to pull Cortland Sutton up by a couple of spots ahead of ADP and take him as my wide receiver too. Cortland Sutton, incidentally, one of the highest wide receiver advance rates last year at 28% on underdog. Absolutely dominated. Hey, James, appreciate you checking us out tonight. Remember to smash the like button down below. That really does help us out. I know it's annoying when we ask you to do it, but it absolutely helps us out. Right, so after me, George Kittle goes. He's the player that I possibly would have considered there instead of Cortland Sutton. Quite like his setup this year without Deebo Samuel there, with Christian McCaffrey question marks, Brandon Ayuk question marks. I think George Kittle is going to have another very strong season. Team on return gets the Joe Burrow double stack. Like that. Plenty of fun there. Otherwise, I mean, I think I personally, I would have waited till round 5 to take the Joe Burrow click there. Just something about putting him as the second pick would have felt slightly more palatable in round 5 and round 4 with the fourth QB off the board. Yeah, plenty of love for Kittle. I just felt I needed a wide receiver there. Right. And there's tight ends definitely later who I am above market on, who some of you will probably know by now. So back on the clock, 2 running backs in Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, and then Mike Evans and Cortland Sutton got that nice bit of Tampa Bay correlation. We've got Marion Hampton, 7 spots past ADP. That's a little hard to turn down. Jalen Hurts sitting there, a few spots past ADP. Calvin Ridley. Let's take Marion Hampton. No sense in ignoring my rankings when I put them all together. And if you want those rankings, hit the join button down below. They are available full PPR now and will shortly be half PPR versions up on there. Back to the dead zone. So these are your running backs currently in the dead zone. Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, James Cook, Amarian Hampton, Breece Hall, Chuba Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Trevion Henderson, Alvin Kamara, RJ Harvey, James Conner, and Quinshon Judkins. So let's start at the top. Josh Jacobs. What do we say in chat? Who's in on Josh Jacobs? I feel like Josh Jacobs is one of the easier clicks in this zone. 20.6 touches per game last year after the week 10 bye. And after the week 10 bye, he never saw fewer than 17 in a game. The Packers, I just don't think they're a team that wants to be pass heavy. Even drafting Matthew Golden, like, fine, I know it broke the trend for them the first time in 24 years, but they passed the ball at the 3rd lowest rate last year. And I think even if you see an uptick for them this year, I don't think that that's going to be bad news for Josh Jacobs. I do like Marshawn Lloyd at his cost. Obviously a lost rookie year, but I don't think that Josh Jacobs is a bad pick at all. Max BB on DraftKings last year got one team at the finals. Drafters, different ball game, but happy to. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Like, I prefer the tournament format, and that's why I'll still keep playing on FFPC, where the Superflex is $35. And it was really fun. I finished top 6 on there a couple of years back. It was a really fun contest, and I like that kind of tournament format for that. But drafters, it's here for us. Good contest selection at the minute, and we'll definitely keep playing plenty of streams on here. So let me know what you're thinking about Josh Jacobs. Obviously, I didn't take him. He went 1 pick before me to Michael, which seems like a very smart pick. Saquon Barkley, Trey McBride, Josh Jacobs, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Waddle. Next up, Chase Brown. Chase Brown feels like somebody who should have had more of a bump post-draft, really. Like, from week 9 onwards last year, averaged 20.6 PPR points per game, 23.6 touches per game. Now, obviously, nobody was healthy for the Bengals last year at the running back room. Zach Moss had the neck injury. Khalil Herbert, who they traded for, immediately fumbled the ball on his first touch. So Khalil Herbert, I believe, is still there. 6th-round rookie Taj Brooks is there. So maybe there's some concerns about him. But like Chase Brown is somebody who I want because he can just change the game so quickly. He's so explosive and can get those points. And he seems to have earned the trust of the team. So yeah, I'm very much hoping to be kind of about 15% or so on Chase Brown. In this draft, you can see he went 3rd round, pick 32 overall. So I'm back up on the clock. Jordan Addison is sitting there. I know some people have some concerns about Jordan Addison and his off the field stuff. It sounds like he could get suspended, but any suspension should be early on in the season, only a couple of games, and that early point in the season, it's quite easy to get by there. Khalil Herbert's now on the Colts. Good shout. Now you've said that, that's jogged my mind on that. Yes. I think I'd just largely been ignoring him there because I'm just so DJ Giddens mindset. Like when I want to draft a backup for the Colts, it's just going to be DJ Giddens. I think that's a fair point with LaFleur being run heavy, but being forced off it by how competitive the North will be. I think, though, we should get enough positive game scripts or tight game scripts where Josh Jacobs still gets used a lot. And obviously, we use him a reasonable amount in the passing game. Aaron Jones, top of my rankings next. I don't think I'm going to be taking a 4th running back this early, although could we go hyper fragile and then just not take another running back for a long time? Aaron Jones, bye week in week 6. Tony Pollard, week 10. Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, Amari and Hampton. Where are we going? Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard. After this, the wide receivers do start to dry up. It could leave us a bit risky, but hey, let's fuck around and find out. So, 4 running backs through 76 picks. This is definitely not something which I do a lot of, but I'm willing to test it. Bijan Robinson with the bye week in week 5, Bucky Irving with the bye week in week 9, Amari Hampton week 12, and Aaron Jones week 6. Yeah, definitely pushing it a little bit late. It's hyper fragile, hyper fragilistic. We'll see how this one turns out. Like, I'm definitely still at the point where I'm just feeling my way into these builds and finding out what kind of different builds we can get away with. There are a few wide receiver dead zone spots that I really find uncomfortable at the minute, so we'll see how it plans out. Back to running back dead zone chat then. Kyren Williams. So Kyren Williams, the 3rd running back in the dead zone. And I mean, look, everybody's wrote him off for 2 years now. Last year it was Blake Corum that everybody was worried about coming off like 1 billion touchdowns for Michigan. And then Blake Corum really failed to make any kind of impact. Now, Jarquez Hunter, who the Rams, I don't know if you've seen the videos on Twitter, but the Rams were very high on him, really wanted him, and got the guy. Williams, he's a real love-hate guy for a lot of people. Like, I like Kyren Williams. He averaged 81 yards per game in 2024. That was 4th among all running backs. Also fumbled the ball 3 times, though, which isn't a good look. Ranked 35th in juke rate among running backs for 100-plus carries. So it's easy to find an argument against him, but it's like, hey, this is a guy who finishes the RB10 in half PPR points. So where I can land on Kyren is that I want to mix him in. I just don't want to be overly aggressive. Yeah, Rory saying I don't think I've touched Kyren this offseason. Yeah. If we've got either our Rams fans, I know we've got a few Rams guys in the Fantasy Sanctuary Discord. Let us know how you were feeling about them. I know that you're probably completely confident in them smashing. After Kyren Williams, James Cook. Now, the James Cook situation feels like it's definitely being weighed down by the contract stuff. So James Cook in this draft. Where did he go? All the way, jeez, to round 4, pick 47 overall. Like, if he gets paid, and if he gets paid at the rate which he's talked about getting paid, then I think you're talking about a guy who's going to jump up into the third, top of the third, maybe that kind of area where Jonathan Taylor went there. And he fully deserves to get paid. I'm always team pay to players. Coming off a season where he had 17 touchdowns, led all players in the league last year. But when you kind of dive into the numbers, it wasn't as impressive because he ranked 24th in total scrimmage yardage among running backs, which makes very reliant on those touchdowns to buoy the scoring. Right. Let's get straight over to the wide receiver tab because we've got some digging to do here. Emeka Ibuka, my top player. Keep leaning into this Bucs stack. I really like the Bucs as a team. They graded out really nicely on offense last year. One of the top teams in terms of offensive DVOA. But obviously they do have another change with offense coordinator for the second year running. But I'm not worried about that too much. I think there's too much talent there to fail. This was the number 6 ranked passing offense in DVOA last year. They were also the number 6 run offense in DVOA last year. I think there's enough of the core that they can overcome those little bits. Yeah, we've got the boy. First time this basketball season, I've gone triple RB to start. Every wide receiver pick now feels like a rich. Not sure if I'll do that again. It is difficult. You make these kind of selections, and you do have to do a certain amount of firefighting to pull your way back out of it. But I think this is the right time of year to be doing those things. One pick before me, and then we'll scroll back to Anthony's team in a second. So Najee Harris falling in this one. Oh no, it's just I'm well ahead of ADP on Najee. Let's take a look over the wide receiver tab. Christian Kirk, Rashid Shaheed, Rashad Bateman. Let's go, Rashad Bateman. 7 touchdowns last year, 756 yards, both career highs for him. I could have talked myself into Rashid Shaheed there. I think, though, when you look at what he did last year, he was wide receiver 6.5 PPR points for the first 6 weeks of the season, but his air yards per target were like 17.3. And he was the only wide receiver out of the top 10 in air yards per target who was actually fantasy worthy. Like the rest were all wide receiver 40, wide receiver 70, stuff like that. Because it's such a volatile stat. When you see those targets so deep downfield, normally things don't break right for you. And they did break right for Shaheed last year. But counting on that now with the quarterback situation, the offensive line situation the Saints have got, perhaps not quite what I want to be doing. Michael saying Kyron is a volume sponge, but McVay is reluctant to move away from total workhorse, so he's either a great pick at his price or a disastrous pick. I absolutely love that. Yeah, it's like that's why I can't bring myself to fade Kyron completely. I just feel like at this cost, if you're getting Kyron into the back end of the 3rd round, early 4th occasionally, then I'm okay with that. I'm okay knowing that I can't quite build the same way that I might have done with him last year, or, even when there was some doubts, but I was never too worried about Blake Corum. The combination of Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter does make me a little more concerned. Back to our guy, the boy out of the 11th slot, Ashton Genty, Devon Achan, Brees Hall, DJ Moore, Sam Laporta, Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, Darnell Mooney, Brock Purdy, stacking him up with Juwan Jennings and Brandon Ayuk, and then Christian Kirk, who fell all the way down to him there at pick 110. I don't mind that. You got yourself 5 wide receivers now, a tight end who I still believe can be elite and still roll back to where he was a couple of years ago. over the back end of the year last year from week 8 onwards, Sam Laporte was so much more impressive than he was over the first half when he said he was playing injured. 3 running backs, I'd be pushing that 4th running back for a while now. 2 picks to me, and obviously at this point I have Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, Cortland Sutton, Amarian Hampton, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, Emeka Egbuka, and Rashad Bateman. Won't be getting Baker Mayfield, who went to this team on return a little while ago, who had to take Baker Mayfield unstacked. You do you, man. No complaints over here. So, jumping into the players I've got ranked here, Tyrone Tracy at the top, Dak Prescott, which doesn't really do anything for us. I think in this instance, we could look at wide receiver, and it's a bit of a graveyard here. Nobody I really want to pull up to this point. So let's go with Drake May instead and take a bit of a rushing upside quarterback and see where that lands us. Because just quite aware that since my last pick, you can see 2, 4, 5 quarterbacks going off the board. It feels like we're approaching a bit of a QB precipice. So now, my wide receiver room doesn't feel the strongest, but that's always going to be the case when you've only got 2 wide receivers through the first 5 rounds. We will bulk that out and make it up as we go along. Yes, sir. Drafters Hype going to be doing plenty more of these Drafters streams this year. The good people at Drafters have been very good to us, so we will be very good to them. Promo code Sanctuary if you've not ever joined or signed up before. 100% deposit match all the way up to $100. App is available on the App Store for UK users. So when this comes back around to me, I don't think I want to take another quarterback here. I don't mind David Njoku, but I feel like it's kind of still a situation where I might want to dive in with wide receivers since the last pick, which we had 3 quarterbacks go off the board. So feeling better about that decision to take 1 quarterback there. We could take Marvin Mims. We could take Jalen McMillan. There's not too many desirable choices here. Jack Beck, who, but I don't want to be in these running back streets. 6 seconds to go. Let's take Jack Beck just for the sake of throwing another wide receiver in there and potentially giving us an out to Geno Smith later on. We'll circle back to the chat for a minute. How do you feel about Ramondre? Got some decent coach speak recently. Yeah, I feel fine about Ramondre. Obviously, Trevion Henderson is probably a far more talented player and probably does the kind of things which Ramondre does better than him. But yeah, we see so many rookies come into the NFL and not be able to do the basics well enough to get on the field consistently, whether that's pass protection, whether that's seeing the holes in front of them and taking them, or picking up the playbook. The Patriots aren't going to have a talented offensive line. It's not going to be easy for Henderson. So I think that Ramondre is somebody I want to mix in. I have more faith in Henderson, definitely, but I'm okay mixing in Ramondre a bit more than some people are. Eddie saying, I loved Kyron's ADP last year, the foot of him returning punts. It's so funny how that became such a big thing and then just absolutely turned into nothing. Hopefully that was a lesson learned for people, and this year we get a little bit less of that sort of stuff. And Harry saying, I struggle to envision a world where I'd ever draft Chase Brown, HN, or Kyron. Just do not trust them despite whatever numbers they put up. There's definitely something about that kind of archetype of running back that can be difficult. I think for me, it's chasing the upside of that. If you've got a player who is incredibly explosive and can change the game in a second, then that generally leads to higher points totals in games. Higher points totals leads to more points all around, more fantasy points, and that is something which is good for the game, So I very much understand why people don't like drafting those types of players. HM was somebody I struggled with last year and didn't draft too much of, but I think they're just guys that I don't want to completely ignore. And Chase Brown, I will be aggressive of. GMGM, Mr. Garage, good to see you. Crushing it over on your channel, streaming with Bindles as well. Lots going on. Let's jump down the list to the next running back on the dead zone. Amarian Hampton, our guy who we took at pick 52 in round 5. So on last week on Fantasy Pros Best Ball Show with Andrew Erickson and myself, we talked about how he can be a difficult click. And Andrew's probably a bit stronger on this than me. I think the biggest thing that stands out about Amarian Hampton's ADP is just how much higher it is than Najee Harris. So you can see here Najee Harris going all the way there at pick 108, nearly 60 picks behind Amarian Hampton. And Greg Roman has never really been one to throw huge workloads at rookies. We know that it's a very favorable system for running backs. And if Najee Harris gets goal line work, that might be enough for Najee Harris to pay off as the better value overall. But on this team, where I had Bijan Robinson and Bucky Irving, I'm really counting on ceiling performances down the back end. And if Omarion Hampton can earn that role by the back end, we can cope with the early season, particularly with Aaron Jones mixed in there as our RB3. Back on the clock, let's take JJ McCarthy as our second quarterback. Stack him up with Jordan Addison and Aaron Jones. I've got no qualms about that one. The wide receiver room, 6 wide receivers. Yes, it's not the most impressive wide receiver room, but it's enough that I feel like I can take that pivot. So yeah, so Amarian Hampton for me players that I'm probably not going to be hugely aggressive on, but he's somebody I'm quite willing to mix in at this point in the season. Here he is, the busiest draft man in town. Tyler, are you not on 5 or 6 different shows today? All seriousness, so Tyler's absolutely killing it, and very pleased to hear about some of the stuff he's got coming down the pipeline, because super smart guy. We love having Tyler here on the Fantasy Sanctuary. So 1 pick away from me, 2 QBs, 4 running backs, 6 wide receivers. Little glut of quarterbacks in my ranking at this point with CJ Stroud, Tua, Cam Ward, Romeo Dubs, and then Michael Penix. No need to be taking Penix here. Gino. Let's take Pat Frymuth. Let's push him actually. His ADP lines up for my next pick. Let's instead pivot down and take another wide receiver in Adam Thielen. I was going to say I am above market on Pat Frymuth. I think that Aaron Rodgers will end up signing in Pittsburgh sooner or later. He's just dragging it out, waiting for that lull when it suits him to be there. But you look at what Aaron Rodgers did, throwing to DK Metcalf when Metcalf had signed with the Steelers. Everything he's done lines up. This is just Rodgers. Rodgers doesn't want to go to OTAs. He's at that point in his career, and fine, fair enough. Whether it's a sensible decision or not, yeah, whatever. But hey. New digs doing well. New house definitely settling in. Not quite got my setup fully down yet. Splitting my time as before when I was in the garage. It was one nice stable place. Now split my time between one room upstairs and then one room downstairs. But I've got some stuff coming this week to pad out the streaming gear and make things feel smoother and more easy on the eye. As easy on the eye as they can be with me streaming. But hey, I remember my hat this week, so you don't need my big bald head glinting on camera to you. So let's pivot back to the running back for now. One of the guys who probably is contentious, Breece Hall. So ever since Aaron Glenn took over the Jets, he's talked about mixing in more of a committee approach at the running back position, and that's not really surprising when you consider where Aaron Glenn's come from. The Lions, who had the best committee in the league, really. I think it was back at the league meetings or like the coaches' breakfast, and he was asked about it, and he said that Brees Hall was in a good place mentally, but he said that they would have 3 running backs on this team that they're going to utilize as much as possible. We're all big men; they can all run. They're violent. They're physical. So I look at that quote and I feel like the general vibes around Brees Hall make him a player I'm not willing to go crazy on this year. Like where he's going round back end of round 3, I definitely want some exposure to that. But you bastard, Anthony. But we're talking about a player who's yet to break 1,000 rushing yards in a season, despite playing 16 games in each of the last 2. There's all these trade rumors around him, and it just doesn't feel incredibly good. Harry said, yeah, happy to have sold all my dynasty shares of Brees. I think that's wise. Yeah, I can hit my slow picks after this. I'll go through a few of them once we're done. And also, I know we had a request just to run through how to upload your rankings on here, so I will circle back and do that. So, back on the clock here. And Geno Smith is sitting at the top of my rankings. That would give us a third QB. McCarthy, May, Geno, the bye weeks all work out, and it'll stack with Jack Beck. I mean, what if that's the stack that you simply must have this year? So, obviously, we've not touched the running back position since pick 76 with Aaron Jones, but even now, I feel like I can keep pushing that. We're sitting here in round 14, and I've got no need whatsoever to be jumping back over there. Now then, Daniel, yes, it is. Promo code Sanctuary when joining Drafters for a 100% deposit match up to $100. The app is available in the UK App Store. Any problems with signing up, just give me a nudge on Twitter or reach out to Drafters. They have been super helpful getting people signed up, and they've been very good throughout this entire process. I find the best way to deposit in is with PayPal. That has been the most easy and reliable one for me. But if you have any problems, let them know. Like I say, you can see I think I'm in about 50 different slow drafts at the minute in the $2 contest. So we are working these drafted streets. And hey, look, you use that 100% deposit match for up to $100. That's over 5 free entries in the $20 main event with max prize of $500,000. Or that's 50 free entries in the $2 contest. Can't say fairer than that. So coming back to me in a minute, we've got quite a few players in this range who interesting. Obviously, haven't touched running back in a while. At the running back position, Rico Dowdle, Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson, Marshawn Lloyd, Will Shipley. But the guy I want is Hunter Henry, who had some, let's just say, misfortune last year when it came to playing with Drake May. There was a few almost touchdowns that just never really came off. So I'm willing to bet that Hunter Henry continues to be one of his favorite targets. And I've got more faith taking Hunter Henry, perhaps, than Kyle Williams. It's a more palatable price. So yeah, Brees Hall, a player I'm mixing in, but probably not as aggressively as some. I know our guy, Coach Speak Index, I know Jacob Sanderson, both have heavy exposures to them and to Brees Hall and feel very confident about them. I don't know if Pat Cranes is in on him this year. I know last year, obviously, he took a huge stand. So there are smart people out there who are in on Brees Hall, but for me, it's not one I can see myself getting over my skis on. Chuba Hubbard's the next running back dead zone player we're going to talk about. Last year, 8 top 12 week finishes, scored over 20 points on 6 occasions, made him one of the best value running back picks last year, ADP of 137 when drafts closed in September. Now it's almost 80 spots higher. I think that you can build a case against Chuba Hubbard if you want, but I look at the Panthers. We've got a decent offensive line. The addition of Ted McMillan could be seen as a negative, but I think that's one where you look at the amount of plays per game that the Panthers had last year, and how often they can get somewhere like the red zone and say, well, if that lifts the entire team, then maybe it's just as good for Chuba Hubbard. Last year, the team ranked 21st in red zone scoring attempts per game. In terms of just total plays per game as well, that's where I'm looking for an improvement from the Panthers, and I think that they can get there. So I'm kind of okay with Chuba Hubbard. I think his ADP is still a decent one. Rico Dowdle obviously flashed at moments last year, but I think that Chuba Hubbard is the better all-round back. Let me know in the chat who you guys are smashing when you are in the running back dead zone. Very intrigued to see what people feel about this dead zone this year, and if you feel like it still is there. If you haven't seen plenty of content on the channel at the minute, so Rich did a live Dynasty startup draft the other day, 30-second clock, which was a lot of fun. Some frantic picks in there. Tyler was live with the other Tylers on Friday night. They did a great draft. That was a lot of fun. They did a couple of drafts in there. And myself and Tyler will be back tomorrow night, and we've got more Dynasty content coming this week as well. So starting to ramp it up, and I've got some more stuff I'll talk about in a minute. So Hunter Henry was stacked with Drake May the last time that we were picking. Sitting here with 3 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 7 wide receivers, and 1 tight end. I don't want to get too caught out at tight end because tight end gets a little bit ugly quickly. But I think I might just push this a little bit further for now. And I'm going to take Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell feels nailed on to be the Rams wide receiver 3 for me this year. Obviously, Jordan Whittington could take a step forward, but DeMarcus Robinson's gone. And Tutu Atwell's done enough over the years where I feel pretty confident in him. So 8 wide receivers by the time that we get to round 16. Wide receiver room of Mike Evans, Cortland Sutton, Jordan Addison, Egbuka, Bateman, Jack Beck, Adam Thielen, and Atwell. I feel like we kind of covered bases here. Harry saying, is Brooks' career over before it got double ACL, man? Like, it's a long road back there. Obviously, we're not going to see him play at all this year. Now you're just on a trajectory where you're really just hoping for any kind of role in the NFL, as opposed to before, where there was hope that he could be not necessarily a top tier star, but somebody who was a very reliable fantasy asset. But yeah, I don't know. I scooped him up in some dynasty leagues, and I don't feel like I'm going to be putting him in a starting lineup anytime remotely soon. We'll take Tyler Higbee here. I know the Rams love Terrence Ferguson. Obviously, that gives us a bit more team correlation with Tutu Atwell. But the Rams did say that, look, Tyler Higbee's a starting tight end until he's gone, and maybe that comes around sooner than we'd like. But Higbee hit a few nice games last year, and I'm willing to bet on him still having a little more juice this year. So that gives us an okay tight end room of Henry and Higbee, and we'll use one of our remaining 3 picks to bulk that a little bit further. Back to the dead zone. Kenneth Walker. So Kenneth Walker, like, he's going about 4 picks later than he did last year. It's fair to say that there are people out there worried about Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet, in the 4 games that he had 18 or more touches, averaged 111 scrimmage yards, which was fantastic. There were those weeks where we were getting a really valuable player at a very cheap price on DFS slates or any kind of managed league where you had Charbonnet. But Walker, I think, still looks like the RB1. The team have talked about him being the lead back still. I think everything that the Seahawks have done, from firing their offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb after 1 year to moving on from DK Metcalf, everything Mike McDonald has done seems to indicate to me that they want to be a run-heavy team, and that this year that's where they're going to start and focus. So Rory saying I prefer Sharps at cost this year. I do get that. When you look at the team and you kind of, you're saying, right, well, pick 58 or whatever, Kenneth Walker, or I can wait to pick 114. Now, the difference in the wide receiver that you can pick at pick 58 compared to where you can get one at pick 114 is massive. So, very much understand why, from a roster construction perspective, you might lean towards Charbonnet. I just feel like I'm not completely ruling out Kenneth Walker. Like, I'm quite happy to have an 8% exposure to the guy. Back on the clock, obviously still got only 4 running backs. Tight end, we could throw another pick at, but with Jaleel McLaughlin, Miles Sanders, let's go Jaleel McLaughlin. Like, look, I know everybody is very hyped up over RJ Harvey, but in the 3 players we can't wait to draft series we did last year with JJ Zacharias and Pete Overzet and several other big names, the one player everybody kept coming back to was Jaleel McLaughlin. Like, the underlying metrics were so strong for him. I hate moving away from players like that completely after 1 year. Now, obviously, there were plenty of disappointments in the Broncos backfield last year. But I'm just not willing to say that RJ Harvey is going to completely take over this backfield when we know that Sean Payton has talked through the years about wanting to run committees. That's how he recruited players to the Broncos at times, was saying that he wants to run a committee approach. So yeah, not all out on Jaleel McLaughlin. Find him an easier click than Audric Estime. Back on the clock. Let's take one more look at tight end, see whether we want to push this and come back around. I'm happy to push that. So let's get our last wide receiver. And we're going to stack Kayshon Boutte with Drake May. Like, look, Kayshon Boutte, fully aware of his downfalls, fully aware that some of his plays were quite volatile. But when we're talking in the 19th round, if I'm looking for a player who can make my starting lineup, I like the idea of Kayshon Boutte there. And he's managed to stick around this long. Maybe he can stick around for another year. So we've got a couple more running backs in the dead zone. I'll just rattle them off and let me know which of these guys that you enjoy drafting the most. Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Trevion Henderson, Alvin Kamara, RJ Harvey, James Conner, Quinshon Judkins, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, Caleb Johnson, and DeAndre Swift. So it really is crammed full of players this year. RJ Harvey with an ADP of 54, like I said, I find that a bit of a struggle. Kamara, given the state of the offense in New Orleans, I think now it's just one which, again, maybe it bites me, but this is Alvin Kamara's 9th season in the NFL, never rushed for 1,000 yards in any of them. It'd be nice for him to finally break that. James Conner, very much in on him. He had his 2nd consecutive 1,000-yard rushing season. He's had at least 8 touchdowns in each of the last 3 seasons. Very much not worried about Trey Benson. Quinshon Judkins, not wild about Quinshon Judkins because I do worry about the offense. I think the offensive line could be a bit of a problem. The QB yo-yo stuff could be a pain. Dylan Sampson, who they picked at pick 126. Obviously, Jerome Ford re-upped with them. We'll just read his deal. Then Tony Pollard is somebody that I like. Not getting too aggressive, but he kind of outdid Tajay Spears last year, 4.3 yards per carry to 3.7, 5.4% big run rate compared to 2.3%, and most importantly, had 700 more scrimmage yards than Spears did. Aaron Jones, we talked about earlier, not somebody I really want to have huge exposure to, but I liked him in this roster construction. Caleb Johnson, I'm quite happy drafting Caleb Johnson. Felt like the perfect player for the Steelers. Jaylen Warren, I loved Jaylen Warren last year, but he's just not been able to take over that backfield in the way we want. We know Arthur Smith likes big running backs. And then DeAndre Swift, we'll just keep fading him. Like, Nobody seems to like DeAndre Swift. He's de facto RB1 in Chicago right now, but for how long? Who knows? We'll see. My dart throw tight end at this point in the draft, it is Tyler Conklin. Obviously, him and Will Dissly, the Chargers tight ends, go back to back. I feel like Tyler Conklin is the better pass catcher there, the better red zone target. Will Dissly had his moments last year, and I thought he was a fun player down the stretch. But Tyler Conklin, I think, is the better option. So let's take just a quick refreshment break and recap this team. 3-5-9-3. Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Geno Smith. So obviously we double stack Drake May with Hunter Henry and Kayshon Boutte. JJ McCarthy double stack with Aaron Jones and Jordan Addison. Geno Smith got a skinny stack with Jack Beck. Happy with that. Running back position was where we kind of got things going and we were a bit different compared to usual. Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving back-to-back in rounds 1 and 2. But Amari and Hampton with 52nd pick, Aaron Jones at 76th, and then faded running back position all the way down to Jaleel McLaughlin. Wide receiver, Mike Evans, Cortland Sutton, Jordan Addison, Emeka Egbuka, Rashad Bateman, Jack Beck, Adam Thielen, Tutu Atwell, Kayshon Boutte. It's not my favorite wide receiver room, but I think it has enough. And then tight end, Hunter Henry, Tyler Higbee, and Tyler Conklin. So let's take a look at some teams in here. Let me know if you want me to take a look at your team. We had Anthony at the 11th spot, who started with that triple running back room and mentioned in the chat that he found it really difficult to get wide receiver back on track after that point because every wide receiver pick felt like a reach. DJ Moore, Sam Laporta, Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney, Rich put a short out yesterday. If you haven't already checked it out, do go and check it out, talking about how strong he feels about Darnell Mooney for this year. Wide receiver 27 last year and just going way later than that this year. Brock Purdy double stacked, Christian Kirk, then Jalen McMillan, Grando for that San Francisco stack. Penix, we know that there's a few people in our Discord who are quite high on Penix. None so much as Rich, perhaps. Pat Fryermuth, Demario Douglas, Jalen Wright, Aaron Rodgers as the QB3 there. It's an interesting one, Rodgers. I've seen Rodgers go right around there, where his ADP is sometimes. And I've seen Rodgers go in the 20th round. I was doing a fast draft earlier today. Gary from the Discord was in it, and I think he took him in the middle of the 20th round. Fun team. I think there's you definitely recovered well enough from that. We'll get to a couple more teams in a minute. Hartman, appreciate you joining the channel. Hit the down below. Make sure you find the perks tab on YouTube and then find the Discord link. If you can't see it, drop me a DM on Twitter and I will make sure you get in. That's where you can get access to my rankings, which we'll go over in a minute, just how to get them uploaded in here. Team has a Tyler Fish. And obviously there's also Rich's Dynasty stuff in there, including the rookie guide, which is a phenomenal piece of work, Rich's Dynasty trade rankings, and so much more. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, Kiki, that was fun as always. Let's take a look at your team, Kiki. CMC at the 7 spot. That's pretty early for CMC, but look, I mean, I'm not quite there on CMC, but I know there are plenty of valid arguments for why people are high on CMC, so I do not hate it. AJ Brown, Marvin Harrison, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts for that double stacked Eagles like that. I thought Jalen Hurts start going higher after the tush push stuff didn't pass. James Conner, Tony Pollard, Trey Harris, Kyler Murray, Evan Ingram, Tajee Spears, Dallas Goedert for that Eagles mega stack. Quentin Johnston, Cam Ward, Jalen Noel, Chigakonkwo, Yoshivas, Diami Brown, James and Tucker. So let's see. Yeah, I think, the 4 RBs in the first 11 rounds was so strong. Maybe I would have faded and kept at 5 running backs, but I don't mind that at all. That's a really solid team. Who else we got? We got Michael, Saquon, Trey McBride, Josh Jacobs. So like myself, he was kind of a little bit behind at wide receiver. But whereas I threw in a couple more running backs, he just kept hitting the wide receiver button. Stacked Xavier Worthy with Patrick Mahomes. Got Cam Scatterbo at the 101. Luther Burden, David Njoku, Trey Benson. Tua stacked with Jalen Waddle. I like that a lot. Anyone see ETR Evan Silver put out his first 150 of the year this week? And I believe he's got Jalen Waddle ahead of Tyreek Hill, and raised a valid point of, are we sure that Jalen Waddle just isn't better than Tyreek Hill at this point? And there's definitely some interesting takes within Evan Silver's work, but that one was like, you know what, that's quite thought-provoking. Josh Palmer, Wilson, Marks, Ray McLeod, Brashard Smith, adding on to that Chief stack, Arroyo and Noah Brown. A nice mix of rookies in that one with some upside as well. The 11th spot, taking every wide receiver I had planned, didn't make it easier. That's you, Anthony. He's talking about you. Come at him in the chat. And then Hartman, is this you out of the 3 slot? CeeDee Lamb, Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams. I love that start. Obviously, Tyler would like that one with Devontae Adams. George Kittle, Jameson Williams, David Montgomery, a little bit of Lions correlation there. Then we've got Ricky Pearsall, Isaiah Pacheco, Jaden Higgins, Tyron Tracy, Jared Goff, that Lions stack, Colston Loveland, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, do you know, not a single QB had a worse advance rate than Anthony Richardson last year. Truly was a terrible pick when he was in the 5th round, but now when you get him 10 rounds late, it's kind of hard not to want to take that shot on him. Roshan Johnson at pick 190, Devin Neal, AD Mitchell for that late called stack. QB handcuffed. I like that. You know, it's fun to throw those ones out there. So no qualms with that. Michael saying it's fun enough experiment. Can't see the sort of strategy with no wide receiver 3 will ever be viable unless you get a crazy DK style room. And I haven't seen any room like that all on drafts at this stage. Yeah, it's not something I'd necessarily do lots of, but I think when you get a 3RB build there where it's like different bye weeks and such explosive players, that I'm kind of okay with it. Just could have maybe stopped at 4. Right, I'm going to rattle through some of these slow picks in a minute, but we did have a question about how to upload your rankings on Drafters. So let me just hop back out because I know our guy Andrew, who's in plenty of these draft streams with us, was asking this. So from the main lobby, just go up to rankings, import. If you are a Fantasy Sanctuary YouTube member and you're in the Discord, then you can get hold of a copy of this, my rankings. You just hit load, and then you just hit save. And then when you go into each draft, it'll give you a chance to just choose which version of your rankings you want to use. So now in my slow drafts, you can see, so yes, like I said, in a bunch of these, I can just choose whether I want to stay at ADP or use my rankings, and it will rejig things for them. So again, this is the Spike Week Draft Hacker. All our YouTube members, people in the Discord, you get 50% off this. Make sure you jump in. If you want that code, just drop me a message and I will dig it out. It is floating around in there somewhere. So this team, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Cam Ward. I made the amateur choice there. I took Bo Nix once I had Jaden Daniels. So it definitely forced me into that 3rd quarterback decision when I possibly would have preferred not to go with it on this team. We are in round 17. Just reduce the size of that now. We're through the draft. So I do need more wide receivers and I do need a tight end. Chigakonkwo sitting there staring at us. Pairs perfectly. We will have 2 tight ends on a week 10 bye, but we should have Evan Ingram, which should be fine. Moving across to the next one, it's draft 49. So not too deep into it. A few of you guys in this one. So Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, same start that I started with in the draft today. But here I went Marvin Harrison, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Roma Dunze, Caleb Johnson, and then stacked Marv with Kyler Murray. So here it kind of comes down to a choice of Michael Pittman or Trey Harris for me. I'm trying to wean myself off Jalen Warren a little bit. You can see I'm sitting at 6% exposure on the $2, 7% on the slate altogether. Obviously love Mark Andrews, but I think let's take Trey Harris. Probably haven't mixed him in enough yet. I'll come back to the chat once I've got through these and answer any last questions before we get out of here. Malik Neighbors, AJ Brown, Chase Brown, Devonta Smith, Calvin Ridley. Look at that, man. One pick away from getting Jalen Hurts there, or whatever. Calvin Ridley, David Montgomery, Jacoby Myers, and Cam Scadabo. So a glut of QBs at the top of my rankings in Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams. Nothing standing out there. Egbuka, top wide receiver. But let's throw Mark Andrews on that one. No reason not to. Look, 11 touchdowns last year. 11 touchdowns. Like, come on. What are we doing? And then this one. Saquon Barkley, Lad McConkey, Rashi Rice, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, taking that kind of Eagles power stack. David Montgomery, Khalil Shakir, TJ Hawkinson on the clock here. Michael Pittman, Trey Harris area again. We could take Trey Harris and start building out more of a Chargers stack. I like that. There's nothing else particularly jumping off the page. We could take Jared Goff, but it's a bit of a reach, and we'd only be stacking him with David Montgomery. So let's build that Chargers stack out a little bit further. What if the Chargers suddenly pass heavy this year? Draft 30 for me this one. We have CeeDee Lamb, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, Devonta Smith, George Pickens, Juwan Jennings, Caleb Johnson, Brian Robinson, Dak Prescott, stacked with CeeDee Lamb out of the 6th spot. Love that. So here we could take Jaden Blue for that kind of Cowboys correlation, but we've got 4 running backs already. We had 4 running backs by the time we hit round 8, so don't really feel the need to do that. We could double tap quarterback, back-to-back rounds, take Brock Purdy, stack him with Juwan Jennings. That one feels okay. Different bye weeks, and potentially I'll be okay just leaving quarterback after this one. So one more where I'm on the clock, and then I'll hit on any more questions before we move on. Nico Collins, Brock Bowers, Tyreek Hill, Breece Hall. Like I say, 4th round Breece. You just got to mix it in a little bit. Jalen Waddle, Juwan Jennings, DeAndre Swift, and Brian Robinson. I probably haven't taken DeAndre Swift in many drafts, but yeah, sometimes it's just got to be done. You see, I've given myself to a little star next to him to be stacking up because I've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but it's a little early for Tua at this point. Definitely not quite where I want to go. Let's go down to Jaden Higgins and add him to this team. Nico Collins already on it, and that'll give us a bit of a chance to decide if we want CJ Stroud. Perhaps CJ Stroud's going to turn out to be a better value player this year, even if our offensive line looks terrible. Right. Anthony saying, I didn't like the non-wide receiver start either, but I wanted to mix it up. It feels quite rigid in my strategy, so tried something else. It's a great shout. I mean, look, we've got to be trying things. It is, May 25th? Plenty of time left. And the more you know how these kind of drafts go and what you can get away with, the better. If Richardson is a good pick in the 15th and Danny Dimes is a tremendous pick in the 19th, I don't dispute that whatsoever. Really expecting to see a healthy dose of both players this year. I think that the Colts have so many issues that they're going to really struggle to settle on one player. And I think it's going to be detrimental to everything around them. But you can't argue against the fact that starting Anthony Richardson is detrimental to Josh Downs, detrimental to Michael Pittman, 2 really talented wide receivers. And now, obviously, they add Tyler Warren to the mix as well. Rory, 11 touchdowns, but no divisional 2. We just got to let it go, man. With no playoffs and drafters, surely bye weeks aren't as much of a concern. Well, it's kind of a balance of that because you're still giving up points on the leaderboard. So once this leaderboard kicks over in September, you will see the team at the top every single week, and you'll be looking, how far away am I? How far away am I? And you can kid yourself into thinking it's easy to catch up, but it really does require perfect streaks, having the players who are scoring the most points, but also just not taking zeros. So yeah, I definitely don't want to take zeros at any point, particularly. I have a 15-minute video about how I'm approaching drafters and all the nuances and things that I think are important here, which will be out on the channel this week once I've finished editing it. I will try to get that out probably Wednesday or Thursday in place of my usual stream, with me working late this week and not being around for that one. Harry, any idea how many drafts you've done so far this year, and any estimate on how many you will have done by the time the season starts? Yes, so I'm not sure if I will max the $20 because, as we've talked about, I've moved house. I had a very expensive year. It has not been as kind to me as I would like, but I'll definitely be trying to get as many in on the 20 as possible. The two will absolutely, I'll be maxing. And if they give us another one after that, I'll be maxing that. And if they give us another one after that, I'll happily max that as well. We're back on the clock here. So the low value ones, I'll definitely be maxing. And I'll also be doing a bunch over on FFPC. We've got a partnership with them. If you haven't checked out the link below in the description, you get $25 off your first draft of $35 or more. And I will be streaming a Superflex draft on there. The fast drafts on there are 60 seconds per pick, which is quite fun. Slows things down a little, gives a bit more time to talk about things. So back on the clock, I could take Justin Fields, I could take Caleb Williams. I'm not really wild about stacking either of them with my running backs. Look, let's take Mark Andrews and be done at tight end on that one. Adam, have you done a data review on drafters or not available? I'm struggling to find a lot of the in-depth data in the same way that I did with DraftKings. Speaking to a few people though, and there's a few people out there who say they have some stuff. Drafters said that they might be able to send some stuff my way, so I will be trying to go through it and bringing you as much as I can on that. And then Michael, really looking forward to a few FFPC drafts. Yeah, me and Michael have both been in a few of the same FFPC drafts over the years. They've been a lot of fun and good to us, so we'll definitely be getting more into them. Let it go, Rory. And I will be letting you go. Truly appreciate all of you hanging out tonight. This was a lot of fun. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Myself and Tyler will be back tomorrow drafting on Best Ball Mania. Thanks for everyone. We'll catch you